G'day everyone, thanks for joining me again, and I hope you're doing really well. This is episode 1 in a new video series I've decided to do called Live Guitar Digital World, where we take our guitars and plug them into our laptops and basically try to get a real world working live instrument out of it. So let's check it out. Okay, so here we are back in Reaper, and this episode is going to focus on noise gates. So especially if you're dealing or using, I should say, high gain amps, there inherently is some noise that happens, and in the real world that happens absolutely. And because the amp simulation packages are getting a lot more realistic these days, all of that's being modeled into the amplifiers as well. So I've come up, well, I haven't come up with, but I took an idea that I've just recently found out about, and I've incorporated it into this digital world. So before I go any further, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to Leon Todd over at his channel. Fantastic Australian guitarist in a really cool band called Ragdoll. So check him out if you haven't done already. In one of his videos, he was just doing some tone stuff with some fractal audio equipment. And he briefly mentioned that he had a noise gate sidechained to the input. And I thought, oh, that was really interesting. So I shot him a question in the comments and he got back to me and sort of explained it a little bit. So I thought, okay, great. Well, I don't have any fractal equipment, but you know, I work in a DAW and I've got a whole bunch of plugins, so maybe I can simulate the same thing. And turns out that you can. So let's jump into Reaper. At the moment, I've got the new amped ARC amp simulation by ML Sound Lab up at the moment. And if I just disable the noise gates that I've got going on at the moment and just give you a bit of a taster as to the tone that I've got dialed in, just to start with. Let's turn this modulation off. There's a bit of delay and reverb on there. I'll just turn that off for now. So that's basically our core sound. Now, as I hold the guitar here, and if I give it a little bit of slight bump, you can hear there's some noise in the background. I'll just turn it up so you can actually hear that. And there it is. So traditionally what you would do is you would basically, in the real world, you would have your guitar feeding into a noise gate pedal and then out of the noise gate pedal into the amp. And that would basically silence the signal from your guitar. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't actually silence the amplifier noise. So there is some hardware noise gates that have come out. Some have been out for ages and some are brand new, which use this kind of either a 4-cable method or a side chaining input sort of method. So they've got them in the real world. And that's what I'm trying to simulate here in the digital world. So the idea is that you've got a noise gate, but the noise gate is listening to the signal from the guitar, but it's affecting the signal in the amp chain itself. So I'll try to explain what that means. So in Reaper here, we've got my guitar input channel. This is not getting sent to the master channel, but it is going to this next channel across, which I've called pedal board. So I'm trying to sort of make it real world. This is not going to the master channel, but it is going to this amp channel that I've got here. So what I've got is we have a gate here, which I'm just using FabFilters Pro G. The reason why I'm using that gate is because it has sidechain capability. So what that means is the gate can be told to listen to a signal that is not on this channel. And in this case, it's going to be listening to the signal that's coming from the pedal board channel. Now, with this gate activated, if I go ahead and turn that channel up again, it's dead silent. But if I play my guitar, there's that noise, but it cuts out pretty quickly. Now, I like my noise gates to have a really natural decay on them. For me, I'm sort of more in the rock vein. I like to be able to basically ring out a chord and just let that chord naturally decay off, and then have the noise gate take care of the noise afterwards. So here's an example of that. And there we go. So you should have been able to hear right at the end there, just as that chord was dying off, there was still some noise in the background, and then the noise gate just slowly tapered that noise off as well. So this method is working really, really well. I'll just pop the noise gate back up here so that you can see the settings that I've dialed in. I've dialed in some pretty, to me, what seem to be unorthodox settings. Try to use my ears and go into each of the parameters that were available to me, and just kind of keep moving things until I got the result that I wanted. Now, the next problem that I sort of came into was coming back to this pedal board channel, is I've got some overdrive pedals loaded up here. So as I turn one on, that's still okay. There's not really too much noise happening there. But as I started to click more on, all of a sudden I'm getting more and more noise. So what I decided to do was put another noise gate in there. And so this noise gate is this one here. And if I just bring that one up, it's got slightly different settings to the first one. And that's so that this one complements the next one. Because what's actually happening in my signal flow is I'm coming from my guitar input, going into the pedal board. The pedal board is receiving its sidechain from the guitar input. Then from the pedal board, I'm feeding into the amp, and the noise gate on the amp channel is getting its sidechain from the pedal board. So they're not getting the sidechains from the same source. And this is where the flexibility of the digital well can come in. So now what I've got, a pretty saturated sort of sound here. I've got two overdrive pedals feeding into an already distorted amp, and this is the kind of... So that's a fair bit more gainy than what the last example was. But if I go ahead and just sort of ring a chord out with this all happening... And there we go. Nice and smooth, which is just how I like it. So this system is actually working really, really well for me. So what I've also done is I've set up just sort of another version of this little setup here, where I've changed the gate settings and I've made them react really, really fast. So I'm just going to pull that up for you. Okay, so here we are. Basically, it's exactly the same setup, except what we've got now is a lot more aggressive gate. So the gate is a lot more aggressive. So let's have a listen to that. You hear there's just no time. There's no sort of lead out at all. It just grabs and shuts down on the signal as soon as it's realized that there's nothing there anymore. So this is, I'm not a gent player at all, but this is sort of more closer to the settings that those guys have probably used. So you can get some really fast gating action there. in sort of this live environment, which is kind of cool. So I quite dig it. So there you have it. Thanks for joining me in this first episode of the new series. I hope you found that information useful and that you can use that in your own live setups using laptops. If you've got any questions about the sidechaining gate method that I've discussed, then please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. The goal is to just keep building on this series and just see where it takes me. I'm going to try to follow real world principles and just throw it into the digital world. So we'll see how we go. So thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.